My name is Irma Wani Othman from Universiti Malaysia Sabah. This paper established a discussion on shifting the national higher education landscape and facing current challenges and marketability strategies of COVID-19 pandemic-era graduates. This paper discusses the shift of the national higher education landscape and facing the current challenges and marketability strategies of COVID-19 pandemic-era graduates. The submission is therefore aimed at discussing Malaysia's experience as a country that has to face various challenges in mainstreaming and expanding the national higher education's continuity strategically in the country's uncertain economic climate scenario. Secondary data content analysis methods utilize the results of journals, reports, books, interviews, online news, and other printed materials. Underlying the background of the inaugural study, a selection of significant issues lays justification that includes arguments focused on, first, Ministry of Higher Education challenges facing the COVID-19 pandemic issue, second, COVID-19 pandemic-era graduate marketability strategy, and third, Ministry of Higher Education incentives to assist students in facing the bleakness of COVID-19 pandemic. Disputation of the target of the discussion thoroughly emphasizes the relevance of Ministry of Higher Education initiatives in reducing the unemployment rate, especially among high-quality graduates where the group will make a huge contribution to the development and economy of the country. The future direction of such studies should focus on the essence of further debate on the role of the education sector and institutions of higher learning as a field for society to develop knowledge, thus giving a positive impact to produce graduates with intellectual, physical, emotional, and spiritual potential. High-quality graduates make a great contribution to the future development of the country. All parties must play an important role in educating their children to have a high regard for personal, family and national development. This indirectly trains them mentally and physically to face various challenges such as the COVID-19 pandemic and is able to ensure that the country always has the backbone of the leadership of developed countries in the future. From a future perspective, graduates with higher education are not only skilled, versatile, and hands-on, but also colors the country's professional industry landscape by carving big names and becoming icons in various fields through their positions and contributions to the country. There is no doubt that versatile graduates make huge contributions to society and the country in various fields. Our country's higher education institutions place emphasis on the field of knowledge, profession, and individual skills to learn, understand, master and practice them wisely in producing quality graduates for society regardless of religion, race, and culture in Malaysia. The university also plays a very high role in producing quality and thoughtful graduates in the development of the country. This is to ensure that this generation can lead the country towards excellence in terms of national development and the intellect of the society in the future. This paper discusses the shift of the national higher education landscape in facing the current challenges and marketability strategies of COVID-19 pandemic-era graduates. The submission is therefore aimed at discussing Malaysia's experience as a country that has to face various challenges in mainstreaming and expanding the national higher education's continuity strategically in the country's uncertain economic climate scenario. A. Ministry of Higher Education agenda focus on facing COVID-19 pandemic. B. Marketability strategy of graduates in COVID-19 pandemic era. C. MOHE incentives to students facing COVID-19 pandemic trouble. A. Ministry of Higher Education agenda focus on facing COVID-19 pandemic issues. The coronavirus that hit the world since early 2020 is a new challenge that needs to be faced by all sectors in Malaysia, including the education sector. The issue of the COVID-19 pandemic is a new history that has never happened or been experienced by the Ministry of Higher Education and higher education institutions before. The sudden outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic caused the Ministry of Higher Education to be unable to prepare in advance to face the COVID-19 pandemic. Ministry of Higher Education faces various new challenges in tackling the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in the education sector in higher education institutions. Number 1. Ministry of Higher Education's new challenges in addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. The Movement Control Order, which has been enforced by the government in preventing the movement of the people in order to reduce the spread of virus. The Ministry of Higher Education faces a big challenge when it comes to thinking about or emphasizing the safety aspects of students who are on campus when the Movement Control Order is announced. Ministry of Higher Education also needs to ensure that the close care of students needs to be given attention because it involves the safety of all students so as not to face the risk of COVID-19 infection. Ministry of Higher Education provided food and beverages to students who were stranded in their respective university campuses due to not being able to move anywhere during the Movement Control Order period in March 2020. In addition, the biggest challenge for Ministry of Higher Education was when the coronavirus outbreak was heating up in early 2020 involving the repatriation of thousands of students stranded in their respective university campuses. Ministry of Higher Education also needs to consider the unforeseen risks to ensure that all students are in a safe condition to be sent back to their respective homes. A very neat and orderly delivery process must be taken by imposing strict controls and must be guided by the rules set by the government, which is in accordance with the standard operating procedures. Platforms or digital mediums such as Google Meet, Google Classroom, Zoom, WebEx and Microsoft Teams are used to ensure that PDP continues even if it does not involve physical meetings. Ministry of Higher Education also strives to ensure that PDP does not stop due to COVID-19 causing the existence of PDP online or virtual. Number 2. Teaching and learning challenges during the COVID-19 pandemic. The education sector is not left behind when it comes to accepting or adapting to the new norms in the PDP session after the COVID-19 pandemic hit the whole world, including Malaysia. The PDP challenge begins when Ministry of Higher Education introduces PDP session online or through virtual meetings. However, this poses a challenge when there is a digital divide involving students from urban and rural areas or a measure of rich and poor economies. A very prominent challenge faced by most students is the challenge to access the Internet. Internet access problems are usually faced by students from rural or inland areas due to low Internet access or weather problems do not permitted. Thus, for students whose residential areas have good Internet access, Internet data speeds will decrease when they have to share the same data if they have many siblings. It clearly affects the speed and smoothness of Internet access. Not only that, the challenge faced during PDP from home is that there are students who face financial problems. The group with financial problems is usually those who come from low-income families or the B40 groups. Online learning requires high Internet access and the use of large data plans. The purchase of data is very costly, especially for students who have many siblings in a family. In addition, underprivileged students also face challenges when there is no device that needs to be used to attend classes virtually or obtain digital learning materials. The cost of purchasing devices such as smartphones or laptops are expensive and makes it difficult for students to engage in online PDP sessions. Number 2. Impact of COVID-19 on higher education institutions and students. COVID-19, which has hit the country since the beginning of 2020, not only affects or impacts the country's economic sector, but the education sector has also been affected. The COVID-19 pandemic not only affects all students but also the higher education institutions in the country. Online or home-based learning created as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic puts pressure on a handful of students. Students facing stress are those who face low Internet access problems, especially for students living in rural areas. Furthermore, Internet access is a financial necessity when students have to purchase data at a high cost. Students' mental health was also disturbed due to lack of physical communication with peers, particularly involving the need for discussion sessions. The COVID-19 pandemic also caused the registration of new students to higher education institutions to be delayed until the rate of infection or transmission of COVID-19 gradually recovers or decrease. Number 3. Ministry of Higher Education measures to intensify student efforts during the COVID-19 pandemic. Ministry of Higher Education actively took various approaches to help students during the bleak period when the COVID-19 pandemic hit the country. Efforts are taken to help students who are facing difficulties. The financial injection channeled to the Ministry of Higher Education to help students, especially economic assistance, can reduce students' anxiety in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. Ministry of Higher Education provides data plan assistance, which is very helpful for students who have financial problems to buy a data plan, especially for students in the B40 group. With the help of a data plan, students can access the internet for the purpose of attending online lectures or downloading learning materials. Apart from data plan assistance, Ministry of Higher Education also offers one-off financial assistance of Ringgit Malaysia 200s to higher education institutions students. Furthermore, students who have problems with the lack of devices are also assisted by the Ministry of Higher Education to reduce the cost of purchasing gadgets which are expensive. Ministry of Higher Education also increased efforts to examine the grievances and difficulties faced by students in order to help students studying at higher education institutions. Therefore, Ministry of Higher Education agreed to reduce the rate of payment of tuition fees, such as eliminating hostel fees, especially for students who do not stay on campus. Meanwhile, students who were on campus were given food and beverage delivery assistance according to the standard operation procedures that have been set in their respective residential colleges because they were not able to go out to buy food. Ministry of Higher Education also received great offers from telecommunication companies to provide free internet package assistance for the students to use. In order to alleviate the burden borne by parents and students to remain following PDP online during the COVID-19 pandemic, Ministry of Higher Education has allocated a total of Ringgit Malaysia 24 million for the cost of data plan assistance to higher education institutions students. B. Marketability strategy of graduates in COVID-19 pandemic era. Unemployment is someone who wants to work but does not get a job. They are classified as the labor force of a country, that is, those who aged between 15 to 65 years who are willing to work. In a society where most people can make a living by working with others, being unemployed would be a serious problem. Its negative effects include loss, feelings of rejection and personal failure, and therefore unemployment is widely used to measure employee welfare. The unemployment rate also indicates the level of efficiency in the use of human resources of a country and makes an index for economic activity. Ministry of Higher Education has the instrument to conduct a survey questionnaire within 6 months from the date of graduation. Number 1. Ministry of Higher Education initiative to reduce the unemployment rate among graduates. The government should be concerned as to provide assistance to graduates who have not found a job or are unemployed. This assistance will probably help them to continue surviving before getting a permanent job and having a salary that can cover their living expenses. The Malaysian government has announced a moratorium on loan payments and PTPTN loan deferral assistance for graduates who have graduated because they have not found employment yet. The postponement is part of the Perhatian Rakyat economic stimulus package which aims to protect the people, support business, and strengthen the national economy. In addition, the prescribed loan repayment moratorium is also to reduce the financial burden for the people, especially the graduates. At the same time, it can help cash flow problems that arise in the business as a result of the implementation of the Movement Control Order. Various initiatives implemented by the Ministry of Human Resources to the unemployed was to ensure that they get equal rights in society. Under the recruitment incentive, financial incentives were given by category, namely, the apprenticeship program, which involves ringgit Malaysia 600 per month. Local job seekers aged 40 and above was given ringgit Malaysia 1000, while for local job seekers among the disabled was given ringgit Malaysia 1000. The implementation of this incentive involves hiring employees who are unemployed for at least 2 months. Number 2. PTPTN repayment deferment. In addition, the Ministry of Higher Education has deferred PTPTN repayment for qualified borrowers and has also extended the deferment period for 3 months. There is no denying that the COVID-19 outbreak has impacted various parties such as retrenchment. During the year 2020, the Ministry of Higher Education has implemented intervention measures such as holding various programs under generation, from other ministries, the Social Security Organization, the industry, the university, and so on. Among the measures to increase employment opportunities implemented by the Ministry of Higher Education is to implement the Entrepreneurship Development Program by collaborating with Perbadanan Usahawan Nasional Berhad, which will train graduates to venture into entrepreneurship, and the Ministry of Entrepreneur and Cooperative Development. Apart from that, the Ministry of Higher Education has also implemented a job matching program and held cooperation with the Social Security Organization, as well as held a graduate marketability program in collaboration with other strategic partners of the ministry. This is because the ministry is very committed in increasing the marketability rate for graduates to ensure that graduates will get a job position in accordance with the qualifications and achievements achieved. Number 3. Empowering the entrepreneurship agenda to become a career branch with great potential for graduates. To achieve the objective of making the field of entrepreneurship as a broad career branch, the Ministry of Higher Education has implemented the Institute of Higher Learning Entrepreneurship Action Plan 2025 to ensure the continuity of the empowerment of this entrepreneurship agenda to run smoothly in higher education institutions in Malaysia. Therefore, the government's hope is that this action plan will continue to be able to elevate the field of entrepreneurship in higher education institutions as a whole through the strengthening of a complete entrepreneurial ecosystem when faced with the volatile job market due to the COVID-19 pandemic. At the same time, the government has joined hands to channel allocation warrants to Ministry of Higher Education of ringgit Malaysia 100 million to implement the Ministry of Higher Education and Career Advancement Program, which is also a program for generation under the People Empowerment Initiative through Skills Program and Skills Improvement, which has reached ringgit Malaysia 2. The Ministry of Higher Education and Career Advancement Program Generator program that has been introduced is a unique program because the graduates will be ensured to get a job after they finish attending the courses set by the companies that will take the graduates as permanent employee. For example, courses like Smart Trucker. This course focuses on teaching related to the skills required by the logistics company that will issue a letter of commitment to Ministry of Higher Education. Upon completion of the course, these graduates will be offered to work permanently with the logistics company if they show good performance. Local university graduates who have made a name for themselves as successful entrepreneurs deserve to be made icons to increase the spirit of young graduates to follow in their footsteps. See Ministry of Higher Education incentives to students facing COVID-19 pandemic trouble. The Ministry of Higher Education has undertaken various initiatives in assisting students in facing the constraints of the COVID-19 pandemic. Among the assistance that has been given is in terms of finance. Number 1. Ministry of Higher Education assistance in terms of finance. Not only that, but the government and Ministry of Higher Education have also provided financial assistance through the People's Caring Economic Stimulus Package Assistance Fund. One-off assistance of ringgit Malaysia 200s was given to eligible students where payment was made through the student's personal bank account only. The allocation provided and given to these students amounts to ringgit Malaysia 270 million and will be channeled to students at various levels of higher education including matriculation, community colleges, polytechnics, public institutions of higher learning and also private institutions of higher learning. The government hopes that the fund to some extent can help ease the financial burden of students in facing the constraints that occurred during this pandemic. Number 2. Ministry of Higher Education initiative in terms of students' welfare. The Ministry of Higher Education has also taken other measures to ensure the welfare of students is always guaranteed, for example by channeling food aid for those stranded on campus. It is understood that the Ministry of Higher Education has agreed to bear the food and beverages of students who had to be on campus due to the COVID-19 pandemic and throughout the MCO period. The food and drinks were distributed to students in various methods according to their respective universities. There were several universities that distributed ready-cooked food, and there were also other universities that use the coupon-giving method where students can get their food at cafes or canteens on campus. These steps have to some extent helped alleviate the burden and anxiety of students affected by this increasingly contagious pandemic. Number 3. Ministry of Higher Education assistance from the aspect of devices and data plans. The challenges faced by students come in many forms. Besides financial problems and their welfare guarantees, the students also faced a very difficult situation in terms of internet accessibility and gadgets used for lecture sessions. As it can be seen, the PDP sessions that have been ordered to be conducted online only was not a good news for a handful of students, especially those from the B40 group. Due to this, the Ministry of Higher Education has tried various assistance so that every student does not left out of learning. A total of ringgit Malaysia 24 million has been allocated by the Ministry of Higher Education for data plan assistance to students from the B40 category, which in an effort to ensure that they have good internet access and accessibility while attending lectures online. Number 4. Ministry of Higher Education's initiative in the aspect of transportation. The challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic has undeniably caused the Ministry of Higher Education and universities throughout the country to order students to continually stay in hostels provided on campus, especially for those who have a distant hometown. There were also a handful of students who were allowed to commute from campus and their residence. However, this does not mean that the Ministry of Higher Education does not care about the constraints faced by students. As a matter of fact, the Ministry of Higher Education understands the problems of the students who in turn have decided to help them return to their hometowns after the pandemic situation is not too severe. With this, a step has been taken by the Ministry of Higher Education by offering special flight services for students, especially for those who want to return to their respective institutes of higher learning to continue their learning sessions. The flight offer given specially to these students involves a discount of 20% from Malaysia airline Berhad after discussing and agreeing the proposal with the Ministry of Higher Education. In conclusion, the students will always face new challenges as long as the situation in the country affected by the COVID-19 pandemic has not fully recovered. However, the Ministry of Higher Education is always trying to alleviate the concerns and problems faced by students. As can be seen up to now, the Ministry of Higher Education has spent millions of cash in an effort to ensure that any group of students will not be left out in their study while ensuring their welfare during the pandemic period that is still ongoing. With the various forms of assistance that have been provided, students should be more enthusiastic in attending learning sessions and not waste the efforts of the Ministry of Higher Education in ensuring their well-being is taken care of. Various initiatives have been implemented by the Ministry of Higher Education in collaboration with several government bodies in an effort to alleviate the burden of students as well as alleviate the anxiety and worry that is ingrained in each student when faced with the constraints of the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Apart from that, the Ministry of Higher Education has also taken steps to help students who are experiencing difficulties and affected by the COVID-19 pandemic that has hit our country now. As discussed, the biggest issue for graduates is the difficulty of balancing supply and demand in the various sectors of employment. Therefore, there is competition in the job market because there are a number of graduates who do not meet the needs and skills required by employers. Thank you.